Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Life Stories Unscripted podcast. I'm your host Viviane and I'm a doula, breastfeeding specialist, and a mama coach, and I talk about everything related to preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and beyond. So if you're a parent or you're trying to be one, this is the podcast for you, so stay tuned. Today I'm talking to Ruth from Melbourne, who gave birth 4 times but didn't feel empowered until the very last one. So today we're going to tap on her experience and hopefully cover as many birth stories as we can, since it's 4, which is a lot, but I'm very, very excited. If you watched some of my previous episodes and you like this podcast, please hit the subscribe button now so me and you can share the word of awareness together. This podcast is presented by Perfecta Placenta in Beverly Hills, which is a placenta preserving company. So if you would like your miracle organ to be preserved and get 2 amazing gifts in the form of a stretch mark cream and a diaper bag, don't forget to use my promo code Doula Viviane. And for more information, I can be reached via LinkedIn or Facebook, where I can be found under my name, Viviane Shima, or via my Gmail address, which is birthwithviviane@gmail.com. Without more chit chat, let's talk to Ruth. Enjoy. Hi Ruth, thank you for being here today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me here. It's lovely to talk to you.
Absolutely. So I said briefly that you gave birth 4 times, but you didn't feel empowered until the last one. So I would love to dive deeper on that topic with you. So please tell us about your birth stories.
So I have 4 children, obviously, who are now aged between 12 and 20, 2 boys, 2 girls. My first, when the first time you're pregnant, having a baby, it's also incredibly new and you have no idea what's going on a lot of the time, even though I read as many books and things as I could find. But my labour with Cameron was quite long. It went over a couple of days. I was quite exhausted sort of towards the end. I'd hoped for a completely natural labour, but he got stuck basically. And my labour was sort of stopping and starting. And in hindsight, I think a lot of that was to do with the intervention that was coming into play. As I said, I got quite tired. So they talked about an epidural, which I didn't particularly want, but they tried to use pethidine, but I had an allergic reaction to the pethidine. And was sort of passing out and then vomiting and then passing out again. And that was horrible. Like I felt really out of control. And then Cameron got stuck, which was quite funny because I remember the midwife saying, he's stuck on the corner, and me just in this fog of drugs going, what corner? There's no corners in my vagina. What are you talking about? Anyway, he ended up, they were going to do an emergency cesarean, but couldn't get into the theatre quickly. So one of the midwives basically went, hey, let me have a go. The doctor obviously was there. I think there was 16 people in the room by that stage. My husband was kind of shoved into the corner, like it was mental. I'd had an epidural. How did
that make you feel, having so many people there?
Really, it was really overwhelming and scary. I think more than anything, because generally when there's nurses and doctors bailing into a tiny delivery room, it just felt like there was something really wrong. But I was, still struggling with the pethidine, so they may have explained it to me. I'm fairly sure they explained it to Steve, but at one point they had me on a drip for something. I can't remember what it was now. And the machine stopped working and all these alarms were going off, and no one knew how to fix the machine. And Steve was quite a techie person, so he ended up fixing the machine in the hospital for them, which, while that was lovely, that was quite traumatic for him as well, because it was like, do you guys actually know what you're doing? Like, what's happening?
Right.
So Cameron ended up being a forceps delivery. He was fine. He had the bruises on his head. And the next day I remember a nurse coming in and saying not to let many people like pass him around, because all our friends were coming in to see us and family. But they did say, just be careful, because he'll probably have a migraine from the forceps. And I felt such incredible guilt. And mum guilt, is a thing, but just even I'd only been a mum for 12 hours or something, and I felt this awful guilt that because I was unable to deliver him naturally, that he ended up with this 24-hour migraine kind of thing. And I get migraines, so I know how painful they are. So that sort of came into play a little bit. And there was something else I was just thinking about. Oh, they also thought that when they had to hoik him out, that they had broken his shoulder. So he had to go off and have an x-ray to see if his shoulder was broken, which thankfully it wasn't. But there was just a lot of stress, I guess, around it. And he was a beautifully relaxed baby, but it was quite stressful.
It's also on you when you know that, you know, he's a baby, and obviously there are different medications, and if any, for migraines, right? So it's like you love this person so much, but you just can't help him, even though you
No.
so badly. So, and you don't know, is he having the migraine, or is he okay? Is he being quiet because he's in so much pain, or, you know, what's going on? So that must have been, you know.
And having, you know, my parents and Steve's parents had come in, and then there was, you know, a few of our friends had come in, because we were one of the first couples in our friend group to actually have a baby. So everyone had come in after work, and they were so excited. And it was like, we literally passed the parcel around the room with this poor kid. And then the midwife said to me, hey, you know, he's probably got a migraine. And again, it was just this guilt of, oh my God, like he might not like being handled by all these people. And she actually kicked everyone out of the room. She just went, you guys all need to leave, which was really lovely, because they did need to leave. I was exhausted. And Cam obviously probably had a headache. So yeah, it was good that she stepped up. And I think that's one of the things that I've really taken out of, I had all four at the same hospital. And other than one midwife, every midwife I encountered was wonderful, and they did advocate as best as possible for me and for the baby and for my husband. Like, they were really good in that way. The doctors maybe not so much, but
so would you say that the support system was sufficient for your needs, what you needed?
Yes, I think so, but certainly it's hard with Cameron because it got so confusing. Definitely with the midwives were in, every one of them were amazing and caring and supportive, and helped with, you know, latching on and breastfeeding. And you know, when you first go to the toilet after you have a baby and it's horrendous and there's clots and things happening that no one prepares you for, they were really good with all of those sorts of things. One of my doctors was great. One of the others that I had was not so good, which I guess kind of leads me into Lachlan's birth. But yeah, certainly I do think that the midwives were pretty good and very supportive, which was nice.
That's nice. It adds to your experience, because I believe that the facility you pick where you want to give birth and the support system around you, including your partner, can truly affect your birthing experience and outcome. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So when Lachlan was born, which was 3 years later, it's funny because I've always called him my textbook birth. And I was thinking about it after we spoke briefly the other day, and I'm not exactly sure what I mean by that, because what is a textbook birth? I've had 4 kids and they're all very different deliveries. So is that textbook birth the perfect birth or the system birth? It's what it should be when you have a baby, because there are actually no shoulds when you have a baby. So it was quite interesting that that's come up now, because that's exactly how I would describe him. And the reason for that is because I was 12 hours in labor, 3 hours in the hospital. The actual birth and delivery went well. I had to have an episiotomy with both of the boys. But what happened with Lachlan that wasn't so good was the doctor who'd been doing my care was actually away on holidays, I think. So we had to have another doctor come in who was male, which I wasn't as comfortable with as with my female doctor for other reasons. And it was a Saturday night, and I'd gone in about 6:30, I think. And the midwife said to me straight off the bat, like, yes, you're obviously in labor, it's your second one, come in, that's fine, let's have a look, see what's going on. And she said, I'm going to have to call a doctor. I'm just going to let you know he's going out for dinner with his family this evening. So he will probably want to break your waters because it will make things happen quicker. If you don't want that to happen and you want to do this naturally, you need to say no, and then I will step in. And I traditionally have not been particularly good at standing up to authority figures. It's not one of my strong points, getting better at it. But sure enough, the doctor rocked in, dressed in his going out gear, was obviously impatient, was obviously not happy at being called away, was very sort of flustery when he came in. And first thing he said was, I think we should break your waters. And I just caught this midwife's eye sort of across the room and went, no, I don't want that. And then she went, okay, well, off you go to your dinner then, and sort of ushered him out of the room. And she was like, good girl, like, you know, you need to stick to what you believe. And like, okay, thank you. So, you know, things progressed quite well.
But it was, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to, I think it was quite nice and empathetic from the midwife, right? To let you know, like,
yes,
this is what's going to happen. I know him. You can do this. You can say no. And especially for someone like you just said, like you have a little bit of trouble standing up to authority figures. And especially, you know, if you're giving birth, you're in a different state of mind. The hormones are doing its own thing, and you're afraid, you know, you're afraid for yourself, you're afraid for your baby. You just want everything and everyone to be okay and healthy. And you know, in those situations, the doctors oftentimes don't explain, so you just are either quiet or you consent without truly understanding. So this is really, really lovely. But Faye, if Ruth, sorry, if I can ask you, what did you experience some change from birth number 1 to birth number 2? Was there something that you knew you were gonna do differently the second time around?
We didn't go into hospital as early the second time around, because I think when I first went to hospital with Cameron, labor kind of slowed down, and that started and slowed down, and so there was a lot of kind of stuffing around. So when it came to Lachlan's birth, obviously I recognised the sign, I knew I was in labour, but we stayed home. My best friend came over. I always, when I'm in labour, I want to walk. That's all I ever want to do, is go for a walk. So she took me for a walk, like down the street, which wasn't far. And as we got to the end of the street, I was like doubling up with contractions. And she's like, I think we need to go back home now. Talking to the neighbours. So by the time we walked back home, and then, you know, got organised and got in the car, getting to the hospital that little bit later was good because I was comfortable and safe. I had my friend there, Steve was there. I had the room to move around. I could have a shower. I prefer being upright on my feet, like many of us do. And I feel that just helped it go a lot more smoothly. Whereas, Cameron's birth kind of stopped and started, I think, because we panicked and rushed into hospital, like, oh my God, the baby's coming. And that's an experience and a knowledge thing more than anything. It's being through it once and recognizing the signs, and I guess trusting in where I was.
Right, and trusting your body and knowing, like, this is okay. I don't have to stress. I don't have to be afraid, because then fear kicks in, and fear and stress, they can stall birth. They can make it longer for you, you know, more dreadful, not enjoyable. And also it can be, you know, it can be stressful, not just for you, but for the baby too.
Yeah. But the thing that was difficult with Lachlan's birth was, like I said, I had an episiotomy and they had to stitch me up. And Steve had Lachlan. They were off doing the thing with the nurse, giving him a bath and whatever. And unfortunately, the doctor was impatient because it was 9:30 by the time he was born. So he'd been called away from dinner, and he actually walked into the room and said, I missed dessert because of you. And I was like, what? I didn't mean to, like, I'm sorry. Like, it was this really sort of horrible, I was, obviously right at the end of the delivery, and Lachlan was about to be born, and the doctor came in, and because he had to perform the episiotomy, and he was cross with me. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. And then when he went to stitch me up, he'd given me the local anaesthetic. And I now know that if I have a local anaesthetic, the first one doesn't work. So I need to have 2, and they need to wait 15 minutes, which is a bit longer than normal, apparently. So when he'd only done 1, and when he went to stitch me up, I felt every single part of it. And it was worse than the delivery. I was sucking on the gas and air. I was vomiting. And my feet were in the stirrups, and I had bruises up my calves from trying to close my legs or kick him in the head. I'm not quite sure which, but to stop the pain. And he wouldn't listen when I said how much it hurt. And that was incredibly traumatic, because that area is pretty sensitive at the best of times, but just after you've had a baby, you know, with the swelling and everything else, it was horrible. And it was really disempowering is probably the best word, and scary. It was really scary.
Do you think, Ruth, that he knew that you were in pain and did it anyway?
He must have. Well, he either, I mean, I would literally, I'd used gas and air during the labor, but not much. And I was telling him I was crying in pain, and then, you know, a midwife was holding a bucket and I was literally vomiting into it, which I hadn't done in the labor. So I would like to think that he didn't know, but I think because he was flustered and he was cross because he was missing his dessert with his family, and maybe it was a special dinner, I don't know, but I think he just wanted to get the job done, and potentially having to do a second anesthetic and wait longer just wasn't on his radar. Or maybe he thought I was just whingy and complaining, but I can still feel every stitch. And he's Lachlan 17. So yeah, it was not a nice experience. It was awful, actually. It wasn't even not nice. It was horrible.
It sounds horrible. I can't imagine, you know, just what you've been through, the feelings and emotions, and feeling completely disempowered, feeling completely out of control and violated. You know, it's your body, and someone is doing things to your body that obviously you're very uncomfortable with. You're very vulnerable right after delivery. I mean, all the hormones just kick in, and it's time for you to bond with your baby, and then he does this. You know, it's hard to imagine that these kind of doctors are going around the world and doing this.
And I am much younger. I have experienced sexual abuse as well. So you're completely right with that vulnerability, and someone doing something to you that is causing pain at a moment that's meant to be this beautiful, special moment, and that warring of emotions and hormones and all the rest of it was traumatic. It was really difficult. And for my husband, as I said, he was off bathing the baby with the midwife, and when he found out, he was furious, but he wasn't there, and that's not his fault, and I don't hold anything against him for that. But that's also disempowering for him too, because he couldn't be there to advocate for me at that time that was happening too, which, you know, that's pretty stressful. I guess when someone you love is going through something like that and you can't protect them, and he knows my history as well, so he would have known how difficult that would be. So yeah, that.
Sorry, did the midwife say anything at all during?
I don't remember. I remember her being there and holding the bucket, but I don't remember if she said anything. And what I do remember is just completely withdrawing into myself and doing that whole, please make it stop, please make it stop, please make it stop. Like, there was no way of me speaking after, I don't know how many, but the first few stitches, it was just like, you know, that kind of almost out of body experience of, I'm just withdrawing because I need to get through this. He's obviously not going to listen, kind of thing.
Thank you for sharing this. And, you know, I can only imagine what that felt like, but there is a quote from Shakespeare he said that when you are suffering, but you're still able to scream how much it hurts, you're not suffering, you know, you haven't reached the worst of it yet. So when you said that you just, you know, withdraw into yourself and you just were just quiet and just wanted to make it stop, I think that is. So thank you for. I know
that's okay. And the reason I'm happy to talk about it is because these things do happen and people don't really talk about it. And it is important, because if someone hears this story and then ends up in the same situation, they're going to be a bit more aware. and they might recognize it quicker, or their partner might be able to step in and say, hey, that's not okay, or whatever needs to be done to stop that happening to them. I didn't talk about it for a long time because, you know, I kind of was dissing the medical profession, and the doctor I was seeing, the one who'd cared for me during the pregnancy, was lovely and I adored her. And she had delivered like family babies and all that sort of stuff as well. So I didn't want to speak badly about the practice, because she in her practice was amazing, but the person who stepped up when she wasn't there was not so much.
Right.
Yeah. And at the time, you know, it was just over, and I just wanted to get home and be with my baby and my toddler and kind of move on, I guess. It wasn't until afterwards, in that sort of time of reflection, that I realized quite how damaging that situation was. And I have another friend who has experienced some quite horrific abuse in her lifetime. And when she delivered her first baby, she went into a completely different mental space. And it was, when we started talking about it, it was, I could really understand her, but it was just awful how something that is so natural and beautiful, like having a baby, and that you want, can trigger, if you're not cared for in the right way, can trigger those feelings of vulnerability and not able to protect yourself and fear and all those sorts of things. So it is something to be considered if you are a survivor of, I guess, any abuse, but particularly sexual abuse, and you are going into having a baby. It is something to consider, I guess.
Absolutely. So how did you heal from this experience? And because there is another birth coming, right?
There is. Like I said, I didn't heal till the last one. Baby number 3, Pippa, was born 15 months after Lachlan. She was funny. I'd been niggling on and off with contractions and probably Braxton Hicks and a mixture of both, whatever, for weeks before she decided to make her presence felt. And when she did, it was in an awful hurry. We were at home. I had been literally 10-minute apart contractions for a while. So I was like, fine, I can just hang out around here. There's no hurry. We don't need to go. It'll be fine. And then it was literally like bang, into 2-minute apart contractions. But my waters didn't break with Pip, and she was actually born in the call. So she was still in the sack when she was born.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and I still remember her. It was such a beautiful sight, almost holographic with the way everything was moving. But so Steve and I didn't even think about it. We just were like, okay, well, let's head off to the hospital. And again, my best friend had come over to see me that day, so she jumped in the back of the car and we headed off to the hospital. But Pippa wasn't waiting. And I remember Steve driving and just looking and going, no, waters haven't broken, no waters haven't broken. And by the time I was in the transition phase, I literally had my head in the back seat on my friend's, like, I think she was holding up my shoulders or something, and my feet up on the dashboard doing the whole, the baby's coming, the baby's coming, the baby's coming. And in hindsight, it's funny because we should have called an ambulance, stopped at a fire engine, stopped at the doctors. Like, we passed probably 5 doctor's surgeries, but we didn't. So I don't know how Steve did it, but he did this amazing drive to the hospital. It was crazy. Pulled up, didn't park, just pulled up right at emergency, came around, hauled me out of the car, and Pippa came out into my tracksuit pants that I was wearing. Yeah, so it was quite mental. My friend ran in and said to the nurses, my friend's having a baby. So the nurse came out, and she's with a wheelchair, and she's like, just sit in here, love. And all I remember saying to her was, I can't, there's a baby in my pants. And she sort of felt like down at my knees and went, oh, there is. Like, yes, I know. So they kind of like balanced me on the thing, on the wheelchair, and hauled me through the emergency bit into the triage rooms or whatever. And all I remember from that was, as we went through, she was fully born, and it was that last like really guttural, here comes the baby. And all I could see as they whizzed me past was this poor, probably 10 or 11-year-old boy sitting with a broken arm, waiting to be seen by the doctors, and this just look of horror on the poor kid's face. Oh my God, I'm sorry.
You must have thought,
anyway,
it doesn't hurt anymore. I'm going home. Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah. What did they do to people here? So yes, they, pretty much pulled my pants down. Pippa just went onto the floor, still happily, didn't even know she'd been born probably. And I went into shock. So they did what they needed to do, gave Pippa to Steve. And yeah, I couldn't hold her for a good sort of, I think 2.5, 3 hours afterwards. Like I was literally in shock. I tore incredibly badly because I was sitting in the car.
Right.
So yeah, everything was a complete mess down there. I think it took them, it was well over an hour to actually stitch him back up again. Thankfully, they did the 2 anesthetics, so that was okay. But even the next morning, the doctor came in to see me and, check how everything was. And she drew me this little picture in a notepad, and she said, "I'm so pleased that everything's where it should be." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And this is a doctor I like she's great. And she said, "Well, after yesterday and the trauma and everything and the swelling and everything that happens, I didn't know if this bit would fit to this bit or whether it was meant to go over to that bit. So I just kind of guessed." And I'm just sitting there going, "Okay, but you guessed with my vagina?" Like, what? Horrifying. Luckily, everything was good, but I did experience a lot of scarring and a lot of pain. It took a good long time. I couldn't even say how many. It took a long time. I had to go and see a specialist and whatever to heal. I had some quite bad scar tissue as a result because I tore, every which way kind of thing. So we thought we were done. We said that that was the 3 babies. And then we were surprised with baby number 4, who was an absolute blessing, but that was really difficult. It was difficult for both myself and Steve, because we then realised that I had to deliver Emma, and that was quite stressful. And from very early on, I was happy to have her. It was great. But the thought of going through another delivery like Pippa's was quite frightening. Both in hindsight, both Steve and I had suffered quite a great deal of trauma from the experience of Pippa's birth, and then also through my healing journey and the pain and everything that sort of went through from there. And yeah, it was quite difficult. So we talked to the hospital about having a cesarean, which they didn't want to do because from their ticking the boxes, there was no reason why. And I'm glad that I didn't, but at that time, that was the only way I felt safe, was because I was terrified of the same thing happening again. But they didn't want to do that. The only thing they would have done was induce me. And I didn't want to be induced because that sort of throws you in further. And I was wary of that as well. And it was the delivery that was stressing me out, not like labor, fine. The delivery that was worrying me. But thankfully, I was at a swimming day for one of the boys' school, and was speaking to one of the other mums who I'd known for a couple of years, and she was studying midwifery. And we started talking and about me being pregnant and everything. And she asked, because she had to follow, I think, 20 people through the midwife program. So she asked if I would be one of her people that she could follow through and do whatever she needed to do for her studies. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, that's fine. But I told her how we were feeling and how scared we were of actually delivering this baby. So in their own time, both she and a mentor from her course, so one of her tutors, they came over to our house once the kids were in bed, and they sat down with us at the kitchen table, and they talked to us about everything that we had been through. And I learned so much more about how Steve had felt, because I didn't recognize that he had suffered quite a degree of trauma with that trip to the hospital and how everything happened. I had my own concerns, and they gave me, they emailed me a list of different websites to look at and links to different places. And not immediately, but a little while later, I was sitting in bed one night, couldn't sleep, I was pregnant, uncomfortable. And I started looking through these links, and people were telling their stories, and there were stories that were way worse than what I had experienced. There was beautiful stories of, beautifully natural deliveries and no tearing and none of this and none of that. But what I found from doing that was that reading those stories about the people who had the same fears, had similar experiences, had felt guilt, like all of those things that I'd experienced over those 3 births, it was such a healing process. And I cried and cried and cried, and I kept reading and I cried more. and then I fell asleep eventually. But the next morning I felt so much more calm, because I could see that I wasn't alone in what I had experienced. And people were giving advice as well. So long story short, when it actually came to the delivery, I knew damn well I didn't want to be induced. I knew the hospital wasn't going to do a cesarean. So I actually went and had, acupuncture. On the Saturday morning. They were going to induce me on the Monday. I went on the Saturday morning and had acupuncture in my ankles. And they said, if the baby is ready to come, she will. If she's not, it won't really change anything. But, let's give it a go. This is meant to be really painful. I slept the entire 45 minutes I was on that table. It was such a nice time. And I went into labour that night with Emma. And when she was a 2-hour labour, Claudia, the midwife, actually made it there right at the end. Oh, my finger's falling out. And the biggest thing about this for me is that it's that thing we were talking about with fear, because she explained that when the baby is crowning, you feel that incredible burn. And that burn, if you don't understand it, that burn is frightening. And when you get frightened, like you said, the fear kicks in and adrenaline comes in, and it can, your body goes into, what's happening? And it's so simple, but all she said to me is, when you feel that burn, you know what it is, hold my hand, hold his hand, whatever, hold my hand and just breathe. All you need to do is just breathe. And I was on all fours, and I remember saying to her, it's burning. And she went, you know what to do. And I just breathed, and I breathed her out. It was divine. Like, I'd never experienced anything like it. She came out, tore slightly, had like 2 stitches. It was nothing at all. And I was literally fist pumping, going, I did it. Like, oh my God. And that was like, I haven't even said it to her. That was healing, that being able to deliver naturally without fear, trusting my body. There was no pushing. There wasn't any intervention. And I know intervention is necessary at times. I'm not dissing the medical profession in any way, but it was, after everything, the 3 different labours and then this 4th completely different one, it was beautiful and healing and empowering, as you said at the beginning.
And I know we talked before this episode, and you said that we didn't plan for another baby, but she was meant to come so I could heal, right?
Yeah. I do believe that. Like I said, we weren't planning on another baby. She was very much a surprise. But there was so much healing, spiritually, mentally, physically, in going through that experience and facing the fear and then finding a way through it. And Claudia coming in at the right time and being able to offer support and help, and her mentor spending the time doing that, and then being there at the time so that I could experience something that was so healing. I feel very blessed, actually, because all that trauma would have still stayed, and I would never have been able to face it and work through it without having another baby.
You carry that trauma, and it's you carry it through generations, and you subconsciously teach that to your children. So this is wonderful. And the thing that you said when you found the website, that someone gave you this website and you started reading and you found out, hey, I'm not alone. That is number one what moms struggle with, because motherhood is isolating, especially in the first 3 months after birth, and especially during the pandemic. I mean, I always say to every mom, they're already super women, but doing it during a pandemic, when no one's ever done that before, they're doing the best they can. And if they would know how to do better, they would. So, I always say, you're enough. It's enough.
Yeah.
You're enough.
And there's no, obviously, if you don't treat your kids nicely, that is wrong. But there's no right or wrong. Like that. When I had Cameron, he was sick for the first time. He was quite little, like still a baby. And I rang my sister-in-law, who also had 4 children, but hers were all old. I think her youngest was 8. And I rang her and I said, this stuff's wrong with Cam. I don't know what's wrong. There's this, temperature, this is happening. And she said, I don't know. I said, what do you mean? How can you not know? You've had 4 children. And she said, but every child's different, Ruth. I don't know your child. You do. What's your gut telling you? Do you need to go to the hospital? Do you need to see a doctor? Do you need to give him a cuddle? Like, what is your gut telling you? And that was, I think, the best piece of parenting advice I've ever had, was that every child is different, and every relationship that you have with every child is different. And that trust your instincts, trust your gut is so important for motherhood. And we're not taught to do that most of the time.
Yeah.
Societally, we're not really taught to do that.
There are so many things they don't tell you as a mom.
Yeah.
You should know, you should have access to it. It should be so easy to just hop online and have all the resources, or, and if that's not enough, here's a person you can talk to, or, and that's also the reason of this podcast, to bring stories like these to light for others. No, first of all, I'm not alone. Second of all, I can relate, and how can this help me? Or just prepare a mom. Maybe a mom to be is watching this or listening to this, and she might know, like, oh, okay, well, I can say no, or I can be an advocate for myself. I can decline, and it's okay. And well, this is a possible, scenario when this could happen, because it happened to Ruth. That doesn't mean it will happen to me, but now I feel prepared. Now I feel a little bit, I have a bit more clarity on this.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think that's the thing. Like I said, I've had 4 babies in 4 very, very different ways. And every birth is different, but so much of it does come down to being able to connect with yourself and trust yourself. And when things do get out of hand at times, yes, you need the support of other people or the medical people or whatever, whether it's a doula or, whatever it is that you have and you need. Absolutely, that support is there, but definitely you can trust yourself and you can advocate for yourself for the 2 most important things, because I didn't do that in the beginning, and it took me 4 babies to learn. And a lot of people don't have 4, so it'd be good if they could learn earlier.
Thank you so much for sharing your amazing birth stories. I know that each one of them was different. Each one of them was packed with a different emotional bundle.
Yep, that's one way of putting it.
But thank you so much for sharing. I know that
You're
this
welcome.
will help at least one person, and I know it's painful to go back in time and revisit those and open the wounds, but it's worth it when it can help at least
Absolutely.
one. So thank you. And
you're welcome.
Thank you. And I didn't say who you are besides being a wonderful mom to 4 children. So tell us, please, who you are and what do you do?
Well, as you might have guessed by the accent, I'm Australian. I work as a writer and editor, a copywriter, and a writing coach. The coaching's a relatively new part of my business, but it's very exciting. Basically, the reason I do what I do is because I help people tell their stories. Everyone has stories within them, and whether it's on a business level through website copy or blogs, or helping people write their book and telling their personal stories, or even fiction books, whatever. Those stories are really important to share with the world, because it's through our stories, I believe, that we connect and we're sharing wisdom and we're helping others heal and we build connections and community. So that's my why, I guess, why I do what I do. I've written forever, started copywriting about 6 years ago, that have recently rebranded my business to Blood Publications, which is what it's now called, with that focus in mind of helping people tell their stories. So my website's currently being built, the new one, but you can contact me there because we've got a coming soon page up. So that's Blood, which is FAEBLOOD, publications.com.au. I do have a Facebook page and Instagram. I'm not very good at Instagram, so but I'm getting better. My Instagram is Ruth_Faye_writer, and Facebook is Ruth Faye Writer. So if anyone should wish to contact me for any reason, then they're welcome to do so on there.
Wonderful. So people, even moms, can reach you if they would like their birth story
Of
to be
course.
put on paper, right? That's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. And I've actually been thinking for a while, and then particularly since speaking to you the other day, Viviane, that I know a lot, having 4 kids going through school, I've met a lot of mums and we had lots and lots of conversations. And I think that, I don't know if there's any out there, I haven't looked, but I would love to help people tell their birth stories and share those things with the world and other women, because like you said, it's hard to find that information unless you're looking for it, I guess. Yeah, so maybe that is something I'll look into down the track, but we shall see.
That's it's a genius idea, I would say, because there are a lot of moms out there who would like to share, but they just feel they can't, or they don't know where or who to turn to. So this is lovely that you are, already offering a mom to share her story, but also your next idea, to maybe gather more stories. So it's out there, so it's available and it's easy to access. And with the key points, trust your body and be aware, and everything.
Exactly.
So wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for being here today.
You are welcome.
It was such a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all the best and keep spreading the awareness.
You too. I love the work that you do. I'm so glad that we found each other, and the care that you obviously take of the people that you work with is just beautiful.
And just like that, we're at the end of another amazing episode with Ruth. I hope you enjoyed listening to her 4 birth stories and her experience and how she went from disempowerment to empowerment. If you like this episode just as much as I did, please hit the subscribe button now so you and me can spread the word on awareness together. If you're a mama, a health coach, or a spiritual healer and you have a story you would like to share with me and the rest of the world, or you might know about someone who wants to share, please let me know either via Facebook or LinkedIn, where I can be found under my own name, which is Viviane Shima, or via my email address, which is birthwithviviane@gmail.com. Thank you, and I'll be excited to hear from you. That is it for me for now. Bye.